Behold, it's Natalia. Let's go find some monkeys, shall we?
Did you say sex is like riding a bicycle?
Nothing gets me going like Christmas and wigs. Let's check out this show.
I remember the first creature I beheld. He was a squirrel. His name was Kevin.
I heard you need a DNA sample.
I want to find light and joy in things that bring us together and unite us. And I think science is something that can unite us. Ow. God damn.
There's a world out there, a world that needs to be beheld.
Welcome to Survival of the Filthiest. I have been hiding in a hot tub with these wonderful Japanese macaques. No, I wish I was. I wish I was in that hot tub. But I just wanted to kind of touch base, say hi. I'm going to let you know about some shows coming up next week. Next Tuesday, I'm interviewing the amazing John Fugelsang, author of The Separation of Church and Hate. I'm interviewing him at 12 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday. He is a dear, dear friend. He has a show on SiriusXM called Tell Me Everything. I highly recommend you listen to it if you have the SiriusXM channels. It's on the Progress channel, I believe. I used to do a segment on there called Shit You Can't Say About Words and Phrases with Problematic Origins. Read racist. But anyways, he's a wonderful guest to have on because everything he says is like this perfect, hilarious, uh, just brilliant soundbite, especially given in the times we're living in right now. I'm not going to touch on that right now because we don't have a lot of time. Thanks to my wonderful producer, Peter, we're able to jump on real quick, but we've got stuff to do later. So this is going to be a quickie. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Punch, the Japanese macaque. As you know, I'm a primatologist. I studied monkeys and apes. More specifically, I studied spider monkeys, different from macaques, but similar in the fact that they live in these large multi-male, multi-female groups. And in the case of Punch, who is a little Japanese macaque, roughly 7 months old, born July 2025, he lives in the Ichikawa Zoo in Japan. And unfortunately, his mother abandoned him. And people on the internet became enraged. And I understand. I mean, he's adorable. It's hard not to become enraged when you see this cute little monkey and you're like, where the heck is its mom or dad? Fun fact, dad's not really involved so much. It's not like a nuclear family that you might see here in the West. They live in these large fission fusion groups. They might not, well, not really fission fusion so much with the Japanese macaques. They're pretty cohesive. They might fission off into smaller groups to forage, but the dad's not so much involved. They don't necessarily know who dad is, if you catch what I'm saying. In fact, Japanese macaque females during their mating season will have maybe, consortships, like little like lovers for like a few weeks, maybe four, maybe three lovers. So you don't necessarily know who the baby daddy is. But mama abandoned Punch. And in the case of Japanese macaques, specifically in captivity, abandonment can happen up to 7.7%. And that can happen for a myriad of reasons. A lot of times mothers abandon their young because they're first time moms. And that's the most, the highest contributing factor is first time moms, prima paris. And there's also those that are lower ranking females because what a lot of people don't understand, and I understand why, if you don't know primates, you're not going to understand how their social systems work. In macaques, Japanese macaques specifically, these guys and gals in the hot tubs, they live in matrilineal societies. So essentially, the females stay in the group and the males disperse when they reach reproductive age. And the females have very strong bonds, but also have a very strict hierarchy. And you're born into your position. Whereas males also have a dominance hierarchy, but they actually can jockey for position and fight for it and have coalitions and coups and things of that sort. So it's a little bit more loosey goosey, whereas females are born into it. And interestingly enough, your mother's rank influences your rank, and usually younger daughters are the ones that become more dominant than the older daughters. So that's something that you might not expect. But in the case of Punch, he was abandoned, and the zoo took it upon themselves to hand rear him. And this happens. As I worked in New York City for many years, I lived there, and I know that a gorilla was having issues with just trying to breast or not breastfeed, but they were trying to, well, yeah, they were trying to feed the gorilla, and they actually borrowed a Bigfoot suit from my friend to mimic what a mother gorilla would be like. And so you have to come up with really creative ways to hand rear a baby primate, in this case, a Japanese macaque. And so the zookeepers, I think, did a really good job raising Punch until this point. And a week after Punch was born, they gave Punch a little orangutan plushie. You've probably seen that. And they call that plushie his Aura Mommy or Aura Mama. And it's from IKEA, and IKEA has since donated a bunch of new ones, and it looks like Punch actually prefers the old beat up one, probably smells familiar, probably feels familiar. It's kinda like Linus and his blanket, right? I don't know about you, but when I was a little girl, I had a blankie. I had my blankie that I carried everywhere, and I remember the it was one of those, like, blankets that had stuffing in it, all that came out. It was just like a thin little thing. I didn't care. I wanted that blanket, and I was obsessed with it, and it seems like Punch has his emotional support or a mama, just like we have our blankie, or I feel like a lot of us have emotional support water bottles now, or is it just me? Maybe it's just me. But anyways, the zoo did a good job hand rearing Punch. And when trying to introduce Punch to his group, because eventually they have to do that, it did not start great. Punch was, well, punched around and dragged around and pushed and pulled. And the internet was outraged. And I understand nobody wants to see a baby monkey get beat up. Nobody wants to see it. But the thing is, folks, like I mentioned, the hierarchies, there is a hierarchy, and primate groups aren't always the nicest. I mean, look at humans. Imagine if you went, you had to go to a new school in the middle of high school, you might get met with some bullies, right? And so there's a lot of resilience that it takes to kind of integrate into a group. And one of the things to remember too is primates learn how to be a primate from those around them. So Punch didn't have a mom. It had the zookeepers who probably did the best they could, but he's learning right now. We're watching in real time as Punch is learning to become a monkey and learning how these social structures work. Like there was no manual that he got to read before he entered the enclosure. And so what I like is the zoo released a statement addressing the public's concerns about, oh my gosh, Punch is getting punched around, right? Like we don't like that, and villainizing and others. There's a bunch of funny videos, and I have to laugh at them, but I also have to point out the inaccuracies or the misconceptions about primates. And within the case of the one particular female who really like swung him around like a little rag doll, like swinging him around like he swings around his Aura Mama, and kind of threw him, discarded him, and he got up. And it's a sad sight watching this little baby monkey grab his, plushie and, okay, I guess I'm going to go sit over here. But the zoo pointed out that this was a female who most likely was the mother of another infant that Punch was trying to interact with. And she didn't like that. She didn't like how that went. And he got put in his place, and maybe he was a little rough with the I don't know. I didn't see. I wasn't there. But point being, mama monkeys are like mama bears. They're very protective, and that mama monkey showed him what was what. And that's not to say she's going to kill him, right? And so that's the thing, is it takes time. And then, there was images of him being groomed by another, it seemed like a juvenile that was grooming him and like, doing the whole like eating the little bugs out of his fur and whatnot. Like we braid each other's hair, scratch each other's back. They eat little parasites off each other's body like you do. And so, there was images like that. There was images of him being hugged. Uh and by the way, there's been so many AI videos and images that I can't stand it. It drives me crazy because I'm pretty good at spotting it, but even I messed up. I made a video, it went semi-viral on Instagram, and I somebody pointed out the first two images I used, which were him with his Aura Mama. So they're more innocuous than if I used an image of him getting hurt or something. But still, they pointed out that it was AI, and I was pretty embarrassed because I generally avoid using any AI images in anything I make that I can, because, well, I mean, either you're stealing from artists or you are, putting out a false narrative. Um, so there's that. But what was I going to say? Going back to Punch. Oh yeah. So we saw Punch getting beat up. We saw Punch having some grooming. Then we saw some more bullying and then more grooming. So we're seeing this sort of like roller coaster ride that Punch is going on. And the internet is having a hard time. And I understand. And if you love Punch and you hate seeing that it's not seamless introduction into a group, I get it. It sucks. But that's how primates work. If you talk to any primatologist, I will say this. They're all like, yeah, that looks like how monkey groups function, especially macaques. I used to volunteer at an animal sanctuary. There was a macaque there who I loved, but I was terrified of. And when she would come out of her enclosure, I would back away, and it's not because she's a bad monkey. It's just because she's a macaque. And like I mentioned, macaques are all about dominance. And we would joke, we'd call it casual dominance because sometimes I will never release them, but I have pictures of her getting on my body because, I'm feeding her, I'm taking care of the enclosure and whatever. And on my person, just dominating me, just sitting on me, and it's like, and the whole time I'm sitting there going, please don't rip my face off. Please don't rip my face off because that is a potential. I will point out, I'm a primatologist and I taught biological anthropology. Here is a macaque, 3D printed macaque skull. Okay. Where's the lower jaw? Here we go. A little 3D printed macaque skull. And by the way, there are multiple species of macaque, anywhere between 22 to 25 different species, including subspecies. And they're the second most widely distributed primate in the world. Humans are the first, right? We're everywhere. We're on every continent. Macaques are on a lot of continents. They're not in Antarctica and they're not in Australia. Oh, my phone's ringing. Let's make that stop. Go away. Just leave. But yes, so macaques, this is a skull. I've got that silly virtual background, but you can kind of see how big. Oh no, I hate when this. Oh, there we go. You can see how big the canines are. Very intense canines. And when I teach biological anthropology, I talk a lot about primate dentition. And primate dentition, especially in terms of canine size, has less to do with their diet and more to do with them fighting for access to the ladies or just dominance. And so having canines like this is great if you need to protect yourself, but it's terrible if you're on the receiving end. You don't want this. You don't want this on you, right? And so that's why, and I am releasing another video that I made a couple days ago that I'm still editing about why monkeys make terrible pets, because that was another sentiment I kept seeing in comments in my video was like, and part of it is people are joking. They're like, I don't care. That's my monkey. I'm coming to get him, and I understand. Or like the Tate, I don't know if this was real because everything is, I feel like, AI at this point, but Andrew Tate and his brother, the ones that are known for trafficking and SA, were saying that they wanted to buy Punch. And I was like, oh my God, now are they going to traffic monkeys? They're going to traffic monkeys now. But monkeys make terrible pets and it's really unethical for you because the monkey can very much hurt you. They can also spread diseases and vice versa. But also, it's just a terrible life for the monkey. They should be raised with their own species, right? Which also brings me one last thing I want to bring up is the enclosure at the zoo or zoos in general. A lot of people are anti-zoo. I understand. I'm not going to change your mind on that. But the enclosure is very sparse at the Ichikawa Zoo. And a lot of people made comments about that. And I understand. But just look at some of the environment. They do live, there are forested areas around these hot tubs, but they're not living necessarily in these trees, right? A lot of them are on the ground. They're the temple monkeys. They live in a lot of different environments. And the zoo, it might be a mixture of wanting to recreate an environment like that. Because by the way, Japanese macaques are at the highest latitude of any monkey in the world. It gets down to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So way below freezing. So they have to deal with very extreme temperatures in some really harsh environments. So the enclosure might be to mimic something they would see in Japan, or perhaps it's because older zoos, they want to have a lot of visibility so the guests can see the primates. So these are things to think about. And I understand, zoos are tough sometimes. I'm a primatologist. I go there and some enclosures are great. And these animals, for instance, in the case of gorillas that are dealing with deforestation and bushmeat hunting and things like that in their native countries, they don't have an opportunity to go back there. So they got to make do. But I want to see the enclosures to have as much enrichment and be as similar as what they might be facing in Africa, wherever they may be, if it's Western lowland gorillas, Cameroon, or if it's Eastern lowland DRC, or mountain gorillas in Uganda and Rwanda and DRC. So, but macaques, because they have such a different, varying degrees of environment, even the Japanese macaques, which live in 3 different islands in Japan, and those environments very widely. So these are things to consider. And back to monkeys make terrible pets. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Like I said, they can hurt you. You can hurt them unintentionally. They require lots of care. They're exotic pets. So you need to go to an exotic vet if anything happens. And that can be extremely expensive. They also, it's like having a toddler, because they can live 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, right? So it's like having a toddler with the brain power and dexterity to choose to make your life a living hell. They've got the canines, they got the thumbs, they got the brain that's really smart. Macaques are insane. And people would ask me, I do TV shows, and they're like, "Can there be will there be Planet of the Apes one day?" And I'm like, "Well, spoiler alert, we're actually living in it because humans are part of the family Hominidae. We're great apes, but we're also I think it's the macaques. I always say it'll be macaque attack. If any primate species takes over, these guys and gals know it's what. So, anyways, don't get a pet monkey. Don't do it. Keep loving. And one of my favorite things about the statement that the zoo put out about Punch, their last sentiment was, "Please continue to show your support for Punch rather than pity him," which I think is great for children even today. Building resilience is important. I mean, hopefully you don't have to get your butt kicked to do it, but being faced with adversity is something that children have to deal with all the time. And it's being challenged is not a terrible thing. Obviously abuse is something different, but Punch, I think, will punch through this, and get through on the other side. So keep having faith that Punch will assimilate, he will integrate, and that don't villainize his mom either, because these things happen. I will point out that human women in the 1800s, especially in Europe, when there was a lot of poverty and there was no birth control and there was no safe access to abortion, a lot of women abandoned their babies. It happened because there was no other choice. And so this is not unique to monkeys. It's not unique to our own species. So let's just try to show some empathy and compassion to Punch and everyone, including, I'm going to be a little political here, including all children in the United States, undocumented and documented, all children in Gaza, all children in Congo, Sudan. Let's show some compassion. Let's show compassion for the folks and the survivors and the Epstein files who were children. So the same compassion we're showing Punch, let's show to them as well. That's just a little takeaway. But all that to say, I'm happy to be back, happy to be doing more shows. Definitely next Tuesday, 12 p.m. Pacific time with John Fugelsang. And then possibly I might be doing a quick show with the Augustine Fuentes, who's an amazing biological anthropologist and primatologist. He studied macaques as well. He was going to possibly do something this week, but he's super busy, but maybe on Monday. So if that happens, I will try to give a little heads up. But in the meantime, keep supporting Punch, keep supporting each other, and hang in there, folks. Hang in there. It's a time. Okay. Much love. And oh yeah, patrons. Ha 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 ha. I'm going to and please, a huge thank you to the patrons who've stayed with me in the times that I have disappeared for a hot minute. I love you. I mean that. If you want my firstborn child, it's getting a little late for that, but you can have him. Okay, patrons, who am I going to thank? Daniel Wynn, Claude, Alan, Tom. Or no, Claude, Alan, and Tom. Those are 3 different people, I think. Anyway, Skullbeard, Tori Yates Orr. Hi, Tori. Redding Maley, Dana Logan, Michael Z. Weinstock, David Leitner, James Hudspeth, Anthony Zana, Tom Berman, Jen Beverstock, Scott Froschauer, JSB, Jeff Cohen, Andrea Bloom, Jonathan Marks, Kelly Frazier, Michael Clanton, PJ Shapiro, Kelly Dorr, Thank you so very much. And thank you to my producer, Peter, who has been just my rock through so much. And like he also doubles as my therapist. Peter, you know this. Thank you.
We
And I'll
don't
see
talk
you
about
next
that.
week, folks. Oh, we don't
Bye.
talk. Right. Okay. Shh.
Bye.
But thank you. Thank you. Bye.